Hey, everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the Sheeple.com's Daily News Brief. And the reason why I waited till the weekend to do this is because I was waiting to see how certain things would play out with regards to the Doomsday Clock, and there were some very interesting, newsworthy things that were kind of percolating in the background, and boy, did they kick off. So let's go over a couple things. First of all, the Doomsday Clock ticks closer to apocalypse, and one person is to blame. This according to USA Today. And one person, my friends, is to blame. It says scientists move the hands of the Doomsday Clock closer to midnight on Thursday, and increasing worries over nuclear weapons and climate change. So really the two things that they say that are really affecting this are nuclear weapons and climate change. It says each year, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, a nonprofit that sets the clock, decides whether the events of the previous year pushes humanity closer or further from destruction. The symbolic clock is now 2.5 minutes from midnight, the closest it's been to midnight since 1953 when the hydrogen bomb was first tested. Scientists blamed a cocktail of threats ranging from dangerous political rhetoric to the potential of a nuclear threat as the catalyst for moving the clock closer towards doomsday. And of course, again, this is all really a subjective opinion. It's not objective. And some of the comments coming from this nonprofit are really, really interesting considering just how politically motivated they are. And that right there just goes to show you, the powers that shouldn't be in these control freaks, how things really operate. It's funny. It says, this year, clock deliberations felt more urgent than usual as trusted sources of information came under attack. Fake news was on the rise, and words were used by a president-elect of the United States in a cavalier and often reckless way to address the twin threats of nuclear weapons and climate change. Let's stop there. First of all, I would have to say that the positioning of the United States under a President Obama was much more provocative, especially towards those with nuclear weapons like Russia and China. I mean, he went and pushed. Maybe not so much China. He was kind of like one of their guinea pigs, but certainly Russia. Poking the bear. Well, now Trump comes in, and there won't be so much poking of the bear. That's a good thing, considering that, really the two major nuclear powers, Russia and the United States, it's in our best interest that we get along. If we get along, life is good. Now you have, though, China entering into the mix in a lot of rhetoric from President Trump with regards to China. And if you take a look at the numbers, you can see China's getting the better part of the deal when it comes to trade. They don't have as many laws that govern labor. Their labor rates are much cheaper, and that's why people went and corporations went and moved their manufacturing over to China when it became possible to do it through these free trade agreements and these relaxation of regulations. So all of that happened, and of course, they want to make more money. Well, let's have it manufactured out of there. Because if you don't remember, back in the 1980s, anybody that remembers the 1980s remembers that things cost more back then because they were manufactured in the United States. And when they started outsourcing, a la free trade, while corporations made tons of money through cheap labor and things like that, the U.S., quote, consumer, unquote, also saw savings with, cheap Chinese goods. And so that TV that used to cost you $700 for like a 27-inch tube TV, now you can get a 42-inch flat screen for under $200. Why? Because they're cheap and they're made in China and they're mostly plastic and they don't last that long. But that's what people want. That's what people clamored for. Now, the flip side is, because all of that manufacturing left, the wages were repressed because labor became, jobs became harder to find, especially well-paying jobs. And so because there's a glut of labor out there, 94 million people out of the workforce, not looking for employment, it repressed the wages. And because the wages came down, corporations made even more money. And that's how it works, and that's how it's been. So, yeah, I would say that there has been, a lot of change out there. And not all of it's for the better. And a lot of this rhetoric comes on the heels of trying to stop the bleeding. Okay, so we don't have any manufacturing left, very little manufacturing left in the United States compared to what we once had. A lot of people are clamoring for change. They want jobs back. Well, that comes at a cost. So when we do that and we start putting tariffs in place and we start manufacturing and buying USA and all that, that's going to come at a cost. And that cost is higher prices. You get higher wages. And over time, you get a lot more flexibility, but it comes at a cost. You can't have, a flat screen in every room. You have to go back to, 1 or 2 TVs in a house. All that kind of stuff. It comes with sacrifice. I truly believe that that's where we need to go. If you want to reestablish any sort of, that American dream mentality, then the United States has to stop thinking globalist and start thinking United States. Start taking care of the issues that affect us here. The infrastructure that's crumbling. And I'm not just talking about bridges and roads. We're supposed to be, leading the way. And we have a water system in this country that's old, it's aging, it's leaching lead into the water supplies. And we're looking at water prices quadrupling over the next 5 years. Why? Somebody's got to pay for the infrastructure repair. So, there's a lot of challenges out there. And so you have a president now that's come in that looks like, based on what we're seeing so far, he's pretty serious about change. And we take things a day at a time. But what these scientists have done at the nuclear clock, this is crazy. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. They go ahead and they politicize it. It's really unbelievable. It says, never before has the Bulletin decided to advance a clock largely because of the statements of a single person. This is David Titley and Lawrence M. Krauss. They say, but when that person is the United States, the president of the United States, why? His words matter. I don't know. I don't think you just buckle under pressure either. When another country tries to muscle in on, work or imbalances of trade, trying to take that, all I can say is that at least now you got a guy in there that may not be as big a pushover as anybody else, as President Obama or President Bush. At least that's the way it appears right now. He's coming out of the gate swinging, and we take things a day at a time. That's the best thing you can say. But there are other people that are sounding the alarm too. And Mikhail Gorbachev is one of them. In a piece for Time magazine, he actually penned this piece. He says it looks like the world is preparing for war. Now, yeah, if you advance, see, this is the problem. We have gone with this globalist blueprint and footprint now since the early 90s. And so there's been a real shift in business to go along with this, and everybody has really hitched their wagon to globalism. And now, because of a populist movement, you've put people in place and are going to put more, I would assume, people in place, like in upcoming elections in France, where Holland he's not going to be reelected. Are you kidding me? And you're going to have these populist movements take more seats in politics. And I truly believe you're going to have change in France and over in Europe to where it's going to shift even more nationalist. And so what they're doing now is saying, no, if you do this, why? It's going to cause war. It says the world today, this is Mikhail Gorbachev, is overwhelmed with problems, and policymakers seem to be confused and at a loss. But no problem is more urgent today than the militarization of politics and the new arms race. Stopping and reversing this ruinous race should be a top priority. It says the current situation is too dangerous. More troops, tanks, and armored personnel carriers are being brought to Europe. NATO and Russian forces and weapons that used to be deployed at a distance are now placed close to each other as if to shoot point blank. And while state budgets are struggling to fund people's essential social needs, military spending is growing. Money is easily found for sophisticated weapons whose destructive power is comparable to that of weapons of mass destruction, for submarines whose single salvo is capable of devastating half a continent, from a missile defense system that undermines strategic stability. Politicians and military leaders sound increasingly belligerent and defense doctrines more dangerous. Commentators and TV personalities are joining the bellicose chorus. It looks as though the world is preparing for war. Is this, folks, where we are being pushed to? Is this what this is all about? Perhaps is President Trump a catalyst for war? It's something that you have to ponder, because when you make change in one place, you're going to have it affect it somewhere else. It's kind of like when you change weather, right? The other night I talked about China and how China has admitted now to manipulating the weather. And they didn't have to do that. I mean, because we know that this has been happening for a long time. Again, you can go to weathermanipulation.com, I think it is, and that's a private company that gets paid money to manipulate the weather. So we know that this happens, but if you make it rain in one place, it's going to not make it rain in another, meaning cause and effect. And that's exactly what happens here. It's cause and effect. If the United States puts a lot of money into defense, which we already do, but if we go and put more money into it and start beefing up nukes and everything else, guess what the rest of the world's going to do? They're going to respond in kind. If we go ahead and institute tariffs, another country like China's not going to say, oh, okay, United States, everything's going to be just fine. Yeah, we'll accept your terms. That's not the way it works. Oftentimes, wars are fought without a shot fired. We see that now more than ever through economic war, and then the newest kind of warfare, cyber warfare, which is happening now all the time. Mikhail Gorbachev is right with one regard, that he looks at this as far as being a weapon of mass destruction, and nukes are. But I wonder who would be that guy that would be responsible for pushing the button. I just asked that, who would be that person that would push the button? That would basically mean mutually assured destruction. Why? I think the real danger comes from cyber warfare, economic warfare. These are the things that kill thousands, if not millions of people. It's greed. And how do they establish that? How do they make their money? Well, the military-industrial complex. It's a perpetuating cycle. They destroy themselves, it's game over. Okay? Even if that means they have to live out in bunkers, what are they going to do then? Then it's like that Star Trek episode with the three brains in the glass that were just kind of enslaving people as they flew by their planet because they had already destroyed themselves. And now all they were these little brains in glass jars that were betting on stupid, idiotic things to occupy their time because they destroyed everything else. And they lived with this idea of, they were perfect. They wanted to evolve, and they did, and they got smart, and they knew everything. But that's all they had, It's not all about the New World Order. It's not all about this utopia that will never be found. It's all a pipe dream. But it's their pipe dream, and they're destroying our lives by it. That's what's so crazy. So Mikhail Gorbachev, he's right, and he's calling it out. He's calling it out. He says in November 1985 at the first summit in Geneva, the leaders of the Soviet Union and the U.S. declared that nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Our two nations will not seek military superiority, and this statement was met with a sigh of relief worldwide. And he's right. People don't want these. You don't want an arms race. That just means that eventually when there is a conflict, it's going to be that much more dangerous. So cheers to Mikhail Gorbachev for saying it like it should be. You know, I'll tell you what, it's crazy. The Sanhedrin. Now, here's something else that's very interesting. Breaking Israel news. Sanhedrin blesses Trump, calls on President Trump to uphold the 7 Noahide laws. The 7 Noahide laws are a Sanhedrin type of law. It says, given by God as a binding set of laws for all humanity. The Sanhedrin described the laws as a framework that will benefit all mankind. Eerily similar, my friends, to a lot of the laws on the Georgia Guidestones. Not to say that what they say isn't good sets of rules to live by or principles to live by. But when you find out where they're motivated from, that's where it bothers me. That's where it bothers me. And so the Sanhedrin wrote this: we are blessed. We blessed him as an independent nation, blessing a close ally. This Rabbi Stein. He says the Sanhedrin letter begins that we thank God that a suitable man was chosen to lead America, whose values in the past symbolized a belief in God. I got to ask you, if you take a look back at Trump's life, and I don't know much about it, but I'm just throwing it out there, is your impression of Trump a godly man? Just throwing it out there for everybody to ponder, because I thought that statement was a little bit of an embellishment, if you will. But he goes on to say, and educated its people in morals and family values. Yes, that whole grab the crotch statement was definitely steeped in morals and family values. And again, I'm not judging the man. I'm just saying the Trump that I've seen is not the Trump that they're describing there. At least we can call a spade to spade. Hell, the guy may want to do some great things and he may achieve some great change. Don't get me wrong. Okay, but let's not call him a saint if there is no saint there. That's all I'm saying. And so they asked him to observe the 7 Noahide laws, which are: do not deny God, do not blaspheme God, don't murder, do not engage in illicit sexual relations. Sorry, Mr. Clinton. Don't steal, do not eat from a live animal, and create legal system of justice. There you go. He says it's essential to return to the divine order that was given at Mount Sinai to all man, to the fundamental principle that is common courtesy and common sense preceding everything. The letter emphasizes it is important to return to the 7 guidelines given to Noah and his offspring that protect all human and moral obligations. I can boil it down to 2 things. Mutually respect each other, and that will bring about unconditional love. Okay? You can't have unconditional love without respect, and you can't respect somebody unless you love them. You got to have love in your heart. It really boils down to that. Love and respect go hand in hand. If you do that, you're not going to murder, you're not going to steal, you're not going to engage in illicit sex acts, and you're not going to commit cannibalism and all this other stuff. You'll live in peace with everybody else. They go on, they continue. As an honorable president, you are aware of the importance of Israel as an ally, especially as a cultural ally of the United States. Let me stop there. I think it's important, first of all, that we do not ally ourselves with anybody in a militaristic kind of fashion. I think that that's extremely dangerous. It's what's got us into problems, World War I, World War II, and so on and so forth, onwards and upwards. It's these military alliances that are put into place that seriously contribute to the critical crisis type situation that the world's in. And perpetual, might I add. Whereas if we trade with all and ally with none, think about it. Yes, we can have relations with other countries, but do we necessarily have to say unequivocally, if you're attacked, that we must respond in kind? Why? It may not be our business. You know, that's the thing. We have to consider all this. And let's also come to the realization and come face to face with the truth that the second nation state of Israel is not the nation of Israel that everybody thinks it is. Okay? The Star of David has nothing to do with King David. Can we at least get that and establish that? The Temple Mount isn't even the Temple Mount. It's Fortress Antonia. Can we at least come to grips with that before we go any further with and continue supporting this deception? The fact is, the nation of Israel has nothing to do with politics. And we have to come to grips with all this. And who are we really supporting? And what are we really doing? And I'm not poo-pooing any Israeli people over there. Heck, I love everybody. Whether you're Palestinian, Syrian, Israeli, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings. And until you go over to other lands and become a visitor in their lands, and then look and see what we're doing in the name of what they call freedom and democracy, but what really is forcing our will upon other people. And until you understand the gravity and the impact that it has on human lives all over the world, you can't criticize it unless you know, unless you've been there, done that. And unfortunately for me, I did it for 6 years. I went over and I enforced the will, thinking I was doing what was a noble thing, when really, in the end, it wasn't. It was a facade. You know, a lot of people are convinced to sign up for the military because, you know, you're defending the Constitution. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're forcing your will upon other people. And that's just got to stop. So, you know, first of all, I was kind of floored that the Sanhedrin was even around again. So the Sanhedrin are back. And, you know, so they disbanded, what, in like 100 AD? Now they're back. And now they've blessed President Trump. And so, you know, and they're pushing, you know, the Israel-United States alliance, which, again, I would hope that if you want out of warfare, let's get out of these alliances, these crazy alliances. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's News Shot, and I'll have one again for you really soon. Have a great day, everybody.